the Teachers on the Street, where we go to Northwest Florida State College and we ask regular old college students what they know about ELL students. Now, we are going to be dressing the part. You'll see later in the videos, we're going to be wearing hoodies and pants, all this non-professional stuff. Join us.
Ma'am, I have two questions. Can you answer questions on assessment ELL?
I'll be back. Okay, fine.
First one. What is assessment and what is the purpose of assessment in general?
So assessment it's like a process of documenting your students' knowledge, and it's like you're using data to improve student learning. And it's pretty much used to make decisions for instruction and placement of students.
Interesting. All right, next question. What are the differences between formative and summative assessment?
So formative assessment, you're providing an early measure on student knowledge. So that can include like exit tickets and all that good stuff. And summative assessment it's like after the formative assessment. I know that's probably pretty obvious, but yeah, such as like tests, and it can be graded. Big grades. Yes.
Big grades.
Big grades.
Interesting. All right, next. What is cultural bias, and name 3 examples of it?
So cultural bias, it's like you're suggesting a preference of one culture over another. So like prolonged eye contact can be rude in some cultures, and cultural content appearing on tests, as well as treating students differently based on their culture is kind of rude. You don't want to be rude.
No, you don't.
No, you don't.
Thank you for that one.
You're welcome.
Next, what are advantages and disadvantages of testing in 2 languages?
Oh, well, you see, an advantage could be you could compare their targeted language to their native language. I think that's pretty nice,
Yeah.
so they can become proficient in bilingualism. A disadvantage could be like the stress and depression that they go through in the beginning, and I don't like depression. I don't know about you, it's not pretty fun, but just the same, especially for students.
Not a fan either. Well,
I think that's it.
that's it.
That's
all we have today. Thank you.
So, I have a few questions. Do you mind answering a few? Sure. All right, so how can you assess ELLs to determine if there is a learning disability in addition to language barrier?
Well, to determine if the student has a learning disability, you need to do some screening first. You also need to adjust and adapt for the student as well, and you want to look for progress. You also want to assess the student in both languages to see what they understand.
Oh, that makes sense. Okay. So another question. How can you assess the ELLs for giftedness?
All right. You would want to, it involves a lot of collaboration among educators, like a teacher, ELL teachers, and gifted teachers as well. And once you start the collaboration, you want to get to know the student and interview them a little bit so you can get a feel for what they know and everything. And they'll also have to take a test on English proficiency assessment. And once you get that data, you can figure out where that student needs to go.
Okay. Makes sense. All right, discuss high stakes testing for ELLs.
Right. English learners must be assessed in a valid and responsive way. It needs to come with a lot of accommodations as well, although the student is usually used to, they need to have effective teachers as well to help them, give good guidance and instruction. And it's typically, the testing is typically used to see if students are on the same performance level as other students. However, ELLs usually don't score as well because the test is for native English speakers.
Keyword guidance. I agree. All right, so discuss accommodations for ELLs.
Some good accommodations for ELLs would be pictures and dictionaries in their language, like a bilingual dictionary. Mm-hmm. And it's also good to use word-to-word translators and stuff like that. And something that's good too as well is for when they're in groups, they have someone that might have already spoken their native language as well to help them translate it. And when they're taking tests, they also get extended time and fewer questions than most students.
That's great. That's awesome. I think you answered all my questions. I appreciate it.
Excuse me, can I ask you some questions?
Yes.
What 3 psychological factors can be considered when assessing ELL students?
You're that person that's been asking questions. Luckily, I came prepared. So the 3 factors are background factors, which is basically we need to figure out where they're living, how their living situation is, if they actually know their own language, and then assessing it to compile an effective way to compile constructions. That's the first one. The second one is social emotional, because they're going to have anxieties built up. Most ELL students are immigrants, so they could be refugees from like another country. They could enter here illegally, or even have their family on a work visa. So we really don't know that situation. What we could do is assess by talking to the parents face to face and try to figure out what's going on with their situation at home to better benefit us by, do we need to put more instruction in class, or do we need to put more instruction for them to carry on home so they can learn there? The third one is cognitive. Now cognitive, there's 2 different learning styles. So you have holistic, or visuals, where you're using modeling and hand gestures to show what you want them to perform. TPR is one of the examples that they use. And then you have
What is TPR?
TPR is total person responsible. So basically, if I want you to hear, I'll point to my ear and say the word, and that's to tell you the command I want to do. Or if I point at the door and say close the door, then that's the command that's the universal language of saying, hey, close that door. Analytical is a verbal, which is basically what we're doing right now, step-by-step learning on educating our individual ELLs.
All right, next question. What is alternative assessment, and can you give me 5 examples and subject areas of how these ELLs can be assessed? And I'm going to hand the microphone off to you.
Okay. Performance assessment is, there's 2 types. So there's standardized, which is basically like a summative, which is test or something that's going to be graded. Less summative is going to be more of the formative, which is basically as you're going along, you're making sure that they have obtained the knowledge. In writing, this is developing. Basically, we want to make sure we see progress in multiple areas, which is, can they find resources? Can they use a vocabulary? Can they do have correct grammar, as I'm not doing right now? And then you're grading it by rubric, so that way you can assess how they're going along, because they're going to start from 0 and you want them to become a 4. Reading can be assessed by knowledge of literacy. Florida, that's where we are right now. It's
Yes, we are.
yes, Arctic Florida. They have a standardized test that constructs into reading. So that is a version of the standardized assessments when we're talking about that. And then less standardized is more like the game. We can do games, fun interactive things about what we just learned, or have them retell the story to us. So, and then we have math, which math is basically, it's going to be more of a scaffolding. And what scaffolding is basically it's a tier to get to the overall goal. And we're going to go step by step until they finally get it. So an example of that is like we're trying to learn order of operations. So we're going to teach them how to do addition, and then once they got that, do subtraction. Once they got that, do multiplication. Once they do that, do division, and then once they got that, we can work on how to incorporate all those into the final step. Science is the same thing. We can do scaffolding on that. A good example is the scientific method, because they're going to learn that throughout their entire schooling. You can go and teach them how to do their hypothesis, how to construct it, and all that kind of stuff, to the point that they get it. And then social studies. Social studies is scaffolding. A good example would be 4th grade when they learn U.S. history. It's going to be hard because they're going into a new culture. They have no idea what's going on. So social studies, we're going to do, let them learn how to do presidents, then laws, wars, and then other cultural things that have happened in U.S. history.
I think that was a good response.
All right, I'm y'all's coach, Coach Wilson. Apparently your teacher's got the COVID again. I'm gonna teach y'all today a little bit about ELLs. Well, better late than never.
I'm here.
Matter of fact, thank you for volunteering. Can you tell me, how do we assess writing for ELLs?
Well, we base assessing the writing of ELLs off of their language acquisition out of the 4 stages. So if they're in stage 1 or stage 2, I would assess the students with yes or no questions that they would respond with yes or no, or even prompts that have a lower level response. And then if they're stage 3, I would have them use complete sentences and expanded vocabulary in their answers. Stage 4, I would use higher order questions that students would respond to in writing.
Smarty pants, okay. So, can you answer this one? What are some of the limitations of accessing ELLs?
So there are 4 types of limitations. There is anxiety, time limitations, rapid and cultural differences. Anxiety, students coming in who often, when we give them assessments, they're not familiar with the testing. So I'd probably have them practice the test or exams. Time management, they need extra time to mentally translate the English to whatever their L1 is. Rapid is, so if the students taking the test do not speak the same language or don't comprehend the language that the testers are accomplishing, then, they're not gonna understand it. And then cultural differences, so for example, some cultures discourage individual knowledge.
Just a lot of information right there, okay? I'm just a substitute. What about number 3? How are ELL students identified, reclassified, and exited from the ELL program?
So ELL students are often identified with either home surveys and interviews provided by the program or the district, and then of course they have assessment tests. They're reclassified with a different assessment test based off the objective standards, the measured speaking, comprehension, reading, and writing of that assessment. And then they are exited the program when they have completed the mastery of beyond the stage 4 of the language acquisition that I talked about in question 1.
3, 4, 3. Better than Casey in the basketball game. Not sour about that at all. What about number 4? How can ELL students use self or peer evaluation?
So ELL students who use self-evaluation are able to take ownership of the assessment process and may be motivated to improve their language acquisition. Students can also use the peer evaluations in the same manner, but instead they can discuss the progress with one another to help each other assess themselves or each other in student teaching type lectures responses.
I want to make sure. Yeah, you got that right.
All right, guys, welcome to Trivia Day. Yay! It's gonna be so fun. All right. Yay! We're so excited, aren't we?
Yes, I am.
Yes, we're so
Yes.
excited. Oh,
Tubular.
you're so excited?
I am.
Oh, guess what? You're gonna be asking. You're gonna answer questions. All right. So we got 10 beautiful boxes right here. I want you to pick a number 1 through 10 and a beautiful question.
Okay, so I think I'm going to pick question 8.
Question 8. Alrighty, question 8. What are 4 suggested assisting ELLs with test taking?
Okay, so one of the first ones that come to mind is focus on one question at a time. Another one is read the answer choices all the way through and read the question to understand the task involved within the question. And then if you do not understand the question, mark it, and then you'll be able to move on to the next one and then come back to it.
Very good. Just what I was looking for. Alright, pick another box, please.
Okay, oh, is it because I got the question right?
Yes.
Yes, okay. So, I guess I'll do number 2.
Number 2. What are 3 specific examples of ways to assess content area learning?
Okay, so the first one that comes to mind is portfolio assessment. Basically, it's a long-term goal to record students' progress while providing a clear understanding of what they know. For example, when a student is writing, they can be assessed through letters and reports and drawings. Another one is performance-based assessment. It's incorporated into classroom routines and learning activities. It's also divided into 2 standards. One is standardized testing, and the other one is less standardized. So standardized is tests, checklists, and questionnaires, and the other one is work examples, journals, and games. And the last one is authentic assessment. It's directly from a classroom activity, so projects, portfolios, and even debates.
Very good, very thorough. All right, you got that one right again, so you get to answer another
Cool.
one.
Okay, let's see, we already did 2 and 8, right?
Yes.
Okay, so, I'll do 5.
Number 5. What are 3 ways to assess literacy skills?
So, one of them is oral reporting. So, it'll help ELs practice reading out loud. The other one is retelling stories and reading with partners. So, both of these will increase their fluency and comprehension, and they'll be able to remember. Also, most of this is done in the beginning and intermediate stages, but it's not good to assess them more than 3 times.
Very good, you got that one right too. Last question, please choose.
So I'll do question 1.
Question 1. Explain the difference between assessing ELO for language proficiency, the use of standardized tests, and classroom assessments.
Okay, so language proficiency, I got that one too. It's okay.
Okay.
Measures a test taker's overall divided into sub-skills. So for example, speaking, listening, writing, reading, vocab, and grammar. Those are all within language proficiency. It is also known as proficiency test. And then standardized testing is a test that is made up by a large corporation, and it measures skills, and they compare it between every school. So for example, a school will take a standardized test and another school will, and they'll compare the results to it. Another one is classroom assessment. So it's open-ended assessment. It's longer, used as problem-solving exercises such as portfolios and checklists. So overall, these all compare because they do assess each student's ability in a test-taking environment.
Well, I'll be darned. You got all of them right, so you won.
Yay!
Congratulations.
Thanks, everybody.
You won a new car.
There he is.
I have another question for you.
Yep.
Okay. Explain how a teacher could use language proficiency assessment to inform instruction.
One way they can use language proficiency assessments is using a thing called learning extension activities, which is something that we normally would do for any student, but this is how we can assess where they are as far as language acquisition, is by using this and seeing how far they can get into it. If they can't, then we know that we need to build on it and scaffold to the point where they can get proficient at it.
One thing I took away from this interview was that professionals and even everyday people should learn how to assess ELLs.
One thing that I took away is I believe everyone should know how to assess ELLs while in the classroom because there are a lot of attributes.
One thing that I took away from assessing ELL students is that their cultural backgrounds and cultural differences are going to affect the way that they answer in response to questions on the assessment.
One thing I took away from this interview is that teachers should always accommodate and take account into the ELL's culture and background and what they can do and cannot do when assessing for them.
One thing I took away from this is that we need to, as teachers, become more available to assess and to make progress in the ESOL areas, and that eventually it's going to integrate into every class. So we need to start becoming more better at assessing our students.
Interesting. Okay, what are the differences between formative and summative assessment?
Oh, well, I'm pretty sure formative assessment is the way of providing an early measure of student performance, such as like guided readings and guided notes and all that, and exit tickets. That's a good one. So summative, okay, sorry. So summative, okay. Summative assessment. Can we restart real quick?
Guys, let's see if we can find someone else.
I'm gonna have to cut this part out. Oh, hey guys, I have a few questions.
Hi.